Welcome to the deep dive. If you look back at history, it's pretty incredible how much humankind has achieved, especially, say, the last 2 centuries.
Absolutely.
Because for most of recorded history, life didn't change all that much, did it? GDP per capita, it barely budged until the early 1800s.
Right.
And then it just exploded, grew over 14 times.
Yeah, the curve just went vertical.
And average life expectancy, I mean, in 1900, a newborn could expect to live to maybe 32.
Hard to imagine now.
By 2021, that more than doubled to 71 years. I mean, these are just staggering improvements, all powered by innovation, right?
It really is. It's a testament to human ingenuity. You think about the steam engine sparking the Industrial Revolution, vaccines saving millions, the integrated circuits that built the internet. It just feels like this relentless march forward.
It certainly feels that way. But here's the surprising thing, maybe a hidden challenge that a lot of people might not even realize is happening.
Okay.
Innovation, despite all this amazing progress, it's actually getting harder and more expensive.
Harder how?
Well, by many metrics and in a lot of fields, the productivity of R&D, research and development, it's actually been declining.
Really?
Declining. So our mission in this deep dive is to explore that critical challenge and also show you how artificial intelligence isn't just about, making existing tasks more efficient anymore.
Right. Beyond just optimization.
Exactly. It's poised to spark the next innovation revolution, potentially unlocking, get this, up to $500 billion annually in value.
Wow.
And dramatically accelerating the pace of R&D. So we'll show you exactly how this profound shift is happening and, importantly, what it means for you.
In this deep dive, just so you know, it's based on a recent article from June 2025. It's a collaborative effort by Alex Singla, Alexander Sukarevsky, Leah Bertoletti, Lorraine Yu, and Michael Chewy.
Right.
They represent views from Quantum Black, AI by McKinsey, McKinsey's operations practice, and obviously the research they reference.
Okay, so we've hinted at this challenge, but let's really dig into it. Why are our good ideas getting harder to find?
Yeah, where's the evidence for that?
Well, one of the clearest examples, I think, comes from the semiconductor industry. Everyone knows Moore's law, right?
Gordon Moore's observation, yeah. The number of transistors on a chip doubling roughly every 2 years.
Which is just an astonishing 35% annual exponential growth. Incredible.
It is. But here's the twist, the illuminating part. While performance kept soaring, maintaining that growth came at a huge cost.
How huge?
Nicholas Bloom and his collaborators, they did the research. They found that between 1971 and 2014, real R&D spending in semiconductors, it rose by a factor of 18.
18 times just to keep Moore's law on track?
Exactly. 18 times more spending just to get the same rate of progress. It's like running faster and faster just to stay in the same place.
Wow. That's a pretty stark picture. Is this just a microchip thing, or are we seeing this pattern somewhere else?
Oh, it's definitely not unique. There's a similar concept in the biopharmaceutical industry. They call it Eroom's law.
Eroom. More spell backward.
You got it. Coined by Jack Scannell to describe exactly this. Drug discovery getting slower, more expensive.
Okay.
His research showed that the number of new drugs approved per billion US dollars spent on R&D. It halved roughly every 9 years between 1950 and 2011.
Halved every 9 years.
Yeah, and think about that compounding. It's an 80-fold decrease in inflation-adjusted terms. It's stabilized a bit more recently, maybe, but that underlying trend of diminishing returns, it's very clear.
So semiconductors, pharma, this isn't just an isolated problem then, it's broader.
It seems to be. You see reports in other fields too, like agriculture.
Yeah.
Getting higher crop yields now needs increasingly expensive R&D.
Right.
And Bloom's team, when they looked across all U.S. sectors, they found this widespread decline in R&D productivity. Now, it's worth noting about 22% of organizations did manage to increase theirs.
Okay, so it's not impossible to buck the trend.
Challenging, but not impossible. But the overall trend was definitely downward.
So let's connect this to the bigger picture. Why does declining R&D productivity matter so much? I mean, beyond just the economic spreadsheets, what really stands out to you?
Well, if you think about it, it directly hits our ability to solve really critical human challenges.
Like what?
Like curing diseases, right?
Yeah.
Cancer, Alzheimer's. Or developing breakthrough technologies to, say, drastically cut carbon emissions.
Yeah, the big stuff.
The big stuff. If it gets harder and more expensive to find those breakthroughs, then humanity's progress on these vital fronts just slows down. It's a fundamental drag on our future.
Okay, that really puts it into perspective.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the potential solution, or at least a major boost, AI.
Right.
Now, for a while, we've seen AI used mostly for efficiency, yeah. Targeted marketing, supply chain stuff, customer service, even software engineering. We saw that big spike in AI use after tools like ChatGPT came along.
Definitely. And that efficiency focus is incredibly valuable, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But AI has true disruptive potential, the way it can really bend the curves of that declining R&D productivity we talked about. That lies in accelerating innovation itself.
Okay, accelerating innovation. How?
We see three primary channels, sort of three main ways AI can achieve this.
All right, let's break them down. What's the first big lever AI can pull?
First, let's talk about just generating ideas, the sheer volume and variety. Traditionally, coming up with new ideas, new design candidates, that's core to R&D, but it's often slow.
Yeah, painstaking work sometimes.
Exactly. But now you have generative AI, especially these big foundation models like LLMs. They're revolutionizing things. They can generate chemical compounds.
Not just text.
Not just text. Drug candidates, computer code, electrical designs, even physical designs. And they can do it far, far more quickly than humans ever could.
So it increases the number of, shots on goal.
Precisely. Many more shots on goal.
Do you have an example that really brings that leap in creativity or volume to life?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a great one involving a retailer. They use generative AI to create dozens of photorealistic 3D store configurations.
Dozens. A human designer might do what? A handful.
Exactly. Maybe a handful in the same time. But here's the kicker. The AI didn't just produce more. It even inserted appealing decor features that weren't in the initial request.
Huh. So it added things.
Yeah, showing it could generate greater variety, maybe designs humans might overlook because of our own biases or habits.
That's really interesting. That touches on AI's creativity, right? Moving beyond just following instructions, it kind of reminds me of DeepMind's AlphaGo back in 2016.
The Go match. Yeah.
Against Lisa Dahl, the world champion. AlphaGo made move 37. I remember the commentators were baffled, thought it was a mistake.
Because it defied centuries of Go strategy. They called it a move no human would ever make.
Right. But it was key to AlphaGo winning.
That's a perfect illustration. And it's not just games. This is happening in science now. Real-world breakthroughs.
Like what?
Like David Baker at the University of Washington. He used deep learning models to design entirely new proteins.
Proteins that don't exist in nature.
Exactly. Proteins that don't exist naturally. He actually shared the 2024 Nobel Prize in Chemistry for this.
Wow, a Nobel Prize for that.
Yeah. And these new proteins, they have potential applications in new vaccines, new medicines, biosensors, even agents to break down pollution.
That's mind-blowing, designing proteins from scratch. How does that even work?
Well, it's about understanding the fundamental rules of how proteins fold and interact, and then using AI to explore a design space that's just vastly larger than humans could ever search manually.
Okay.
And it's not just molecules. We're seeing this in physical engineering, too. Generative models, designing rocket engines, for example, with really novel geometries for things like cooling channels, geometries optimized for 3D printing.
So really complex physical objects.
Exactly. Innovation at the core of engineering.
Okay, so AI helps generate vastly more and more varied ideas. But once you have all these ideas, you hit the next hurdle. Evaluating them, testing them.
Right, which is usually slow and expensive.
And that's where AI steps in as the second major lever, through these things called AI surrogate models.
That's the idea. Traditionally, physical prototyping and testing costs a lot of time and money. Think about car crash tests, right?
Yeah, expensive.
Or even traditional computer simulations, CFD, FEA. They're powerful, but running them can take hours, sometimes days.
So the AI surrogate models speed that up?
Dramatically. Neural network tech can act as these surrogates for the really intensive physics-based simulations. They predict the outcomes of physical phenomena much, much faster. Think of them as like super fast digital twins.
And the speed difference can be pretty staggering, right? I read about DeepMind's weather forecasting model.
Ah, yes. Gravcast.
It predicts weather faster, like minutes versus hours, and more accurately using just one specialized AI processor.
Compared to a massive supercomputer running the traditional physics model.
Yeah, a supercomputer with tens of thousands of processors. It's an incredible leap in efficiency.
It really is. And we see it in things like aircraft design, too. Engineers are using neural network models now to predict hundreds of aerodynamic results in seconds.
Seconds. instead of hours or days.
Exactly. So they can test way more alternatives, optimize designs like a turbine compressor much more effectively.
It just changes the whole iteration cycle.
Completely.
And speaking of groundbreaking work, that brings us back to the Nobel Prize again. Dimas Hassabis and John Jumper, they shared the other half of that 2024 chemistry prize, right? For AlphaFold.
That's right. AlphaFold predicts the 3D structure of proteins. It has been applied to practically every known protein now, something like 200 million of them.
Which is crucial for evaluation, I assume.
Absolutely critical for testing and evaluating biological products, from potential new therapies to new materials. It enables rapid in silico testing on the computer instead of just in the lab.
Changes the game for discovery speed.
Totally. And these AI models, these neural networks, they're getting sophisticated enough to handle really complex multiphysics problems, too.
Multiphysics.
Yeah, where different physical forces interact, like designing an aircraft antenna. You need to understand the radio frequency properties, sure, but also the aerodynamics around it, the thermal effects. They all influence each other. AI models can start to simulate those interactions together.
Okay, so AI generates more ideas faster. And it evaluates them much faster using these surrogate models. What's the third channel? How else does AI accelerate R&D?
The third is really about streamlining the whole research operation, the day-to-day work. And this is where large language models, LLMs, sometimes combined with other AI, really shine.
How so? Give me some examples.
Okay, well, one big area is understanding customer needs better. LLM-powered software can digest huge amounts of customer data, think reviews, social media posts, call transcripts.
Mountains of tech.
Exactly. And synthesize it to identify market segments, figure out what features people actually want, maybe spot unmet needs that are hard for humans to pick out from all that noise.
Right, finding the signal in the noise. And I guess in really data-heavy fields like life sciences, they can do something similar with research.
For sure. LLMs and analytical AI can synthesize insights from millions of published papers, patent databases, clinical trial results, suggesting new avenues for solutions. You mentioned those knowledge agent products earlier.
Yeah, from Google, OpenAI, Perplexity, Anthropic.
They're designed to do this kind of multi-step research work, almost like a superpowered research assistant digging through everything for you.
Saves incredible amounts of time, I bet.
It can. And they can also help internally. Think about all the knowledge locked up inside a company: meeting notes, reports, emails. LLMs can help codify that tacit knowledge, make internal archives searchable, and connect internal insights with external data.
That sounds powerful. And what about industries with heavy regulation? Pharma, aerospace, lots of documentation.
Yeah, that's another big one. LLMs can help accelerate generating and synthesizing required documents like regulatory filings. Now, obviously, human review is absolutely critical there for accuracy and accountability.
Of course, you need that human oversight.
Absolutely. But it can speed up the drafting and compilation significantly.
So it sounds like it changes how researchers work day to day.
It really does. It enables this new kind of human-AI collaboration. Product managers, scientists, engineers, they can essentially converse with these LLMs, brainstorm ideas, get quick opinions, even have their own assumptions challenged, almost like talking to a very knowledgeable colleague.
Like an AI collaborator.
Kind of, yeah. But the key is the human skill in using these tools, asking the right questions, guiding the AI, that significantly influences how effective they are. It's about giving researchers superpowers, not just automating tasks.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's talk potential impact, the big numbers. What could all this actually mean in economic terms?
The estimates are pretty significant. Our sources suggest AI could unlock somewhere between $360 billion and $560 billion in annual economic value.
$500 billion a year.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Just by accelerating R&D across industries that represent about 80% of large corporate R&D spending.
Wow. Can we break that down a bit? Does it impact all industries equally?
No, there are definitely variations. If you look at industries where the product is basically intellectual property, think software, computer gaming.
Right, code and content.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Their R&D throughput could potentially double or even more. Computer gaming might see acceleration over 150%.
Why so high there?
Because their products are IP, and generative AI for creating code and visual content is already quite mature. Now, even though companies like Google and Microsoft report AI writing maybe 30% of new code, getting that full doubling potential, that requires big organizational changes too, not just the tech.
Okay. What about science-based industries? Pharma, chemicals, materials?
Also very high potential there. Pharmaceuticals could see R&D throughput accelerate by over 100%. Chemicals, maybe up to 75%.
And how is AI used there?
Things like in silico screening of drug candidates, optimizing molecules computationally, even starting to automate lab experiments, though that's still pretty nascent.
Interesting. Then you have the complex manufactured goods industries, electronics, automotive, aerospace, medical devices, semiconductors.
Right, where you need lots of different engineering disciplines working together. Here, the impact varies a bit more. Electronics could see throughput nearly double. Commercial aerospace, maybe closer to 25%.
Why the difference?
It depends on the specific workflows and bottlenecks. But one huge lever across many of these industries is verification and validation V&V.
Testing and making sure things work.
Exactly. That can often take up half the entire R&D timeline, shifting more of that from physical testing to faster in silico testing, using those AI surrogate models we talked about. That's a massive opportunity for acceleration.
Makes sense. And what about consumer goods, food, beverages, personal care products?
There too. AI is used for analyzing market trends, understanding consumer preferences, and also generating new design candidates. Think new recipes, cosmetic formulations.
So, generating product ideas.
Yeah, about 3/4 of the estimated AI impact there actually comes from generating those new product candidates more effectively.
So, across the board, significant potential. How does this translate to the bottom line for companies?
Well, these kinds of productivity gains could lead to a double-digit percentage increase in EBIT earnings before interest and taxes for many companies.
But does all that value just go to company profits?
Not necessarily, and that's a really important point. A significant chunk of that value will likely be captured by you, the customer,
How?
in the form of better, higher-value products, maybe at lower prices eventually. Competition tends to drive that.
Okay.
And it's worth noting these dollar estimates are probably conservative. So
Why is that?
they mostly focus on throughput acceleration. They don't fully quantify the value of creating entirely new categories of higher value products or the savings from lower R&D costs themselves, or the potential for truly massive breakthroughs like, say, limitless clean energy from nuclear fusion.
Right, the black swan events.
Exactly. And maybe most importantly, these figures just can't capture the immeasurable societal benefits.
Right.
Like the new industries that spun off from inventions made during the space race, right? Or the just incalculable value of saving lives through healthcare innovations.
Yeah, you can't put a price on that.
You really can't. So if AI can genuinely bend that innovation productivity curve back upwards, it fundamentally means improving the quality and maybe even the duration of life for future generations.
That's a powerful thought. So given all this potential, what should business leaders be doing now to harness this power?
Well, the biggest takeaway, I think, is that the tech alone isn't enough. Even the most amazing scientific advances won't move the needle by themselves.
It's about organizational change.
Exactly. Realizing AI's potential in R&D requires significant organizational shifts. It's as much about people and process as it is about algorithms.
Okay, so it's not just plug and play. What's the first step for leaders then?
Move quickly and scale rapidly. These AI capabilities, they're available today, they're improving fast. Climbing that learning curve faster than your competitors is a real strategic advantage.
So avoid getting stuck in endless pilots.
Yes, avoid pilot purgatory. Build the organizational muscles needed to actually capture the value at scale. Speed is really key here.
Okay, move fast, scale fast. Beyond just integrating the tech, what else needs to change inside the organization?
You really need to rewire the organization beyond just the tech stack.
Rewire how?
It means aligning your strategy, building the right talent, which might mean new skills, new roles, adopting new organizational models, using agile delivery methods, driving adoption and scaling, managing the change. It's holistic.
Can you give a concrete example of that kind of rewiring?
Sure. Think about those physical prototyping and testing groups and the computational simulation groups. Traditionally, they might be separate silos.
Right.
Rewiring might mean unifying them under a single management structure. Why? So they can make holistic decisions together about when physical testing is truly necessary versus when you can rely on faster, cheaper in silico simulation using AI. It changes the whole workflow and decision-making process.
Ah, I see. Breaking down silos to optimize the whole system. What about the AI models themselves?
That's the next crucial piece.
Yeah.
Companies need to build a core competency around models.
What does that involve?
It means developing a critical new skill set. How to evaluate AI models, how to integrate them, when to train or adapt existing models versus building your own, making those critical build versus buy decisions, whether it's using open source models, buying commercial ones, or developing proprietary ones internally.
And that requires strong data foundations too, I assume.
Absolutely. It requires deepening your data sourcing and data engineering capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Good AI needs good data.
Okay. And finally, you mentioned earlier, it's not just about automation. Humans are still key. How do leaders get that balance right?
Yeah, that's vital. Be really thoughtful about incorporating humans in the loop. Full automation might sound appealing in some cases, but people will remain crucial
Why?
for judgment, for context, for ethical considerations, for accountability, especially in high-stakes areas. Roles will definitely shift, and that means reskilling and upskilling are essential. Leaders need to clearly identify where humans are absolutely critical, particularly for safety and accountability.
And making sure employees are on board.
Exactly. Making sure employees feel empowered by these tools, like they're getting those superpowers we talked about, rather than feeling like they're just, serving the machine. It's got to be about augmentation, not just replacement.
So quite a journey we've covered, from this incredible historical progress to facing that hidden challenge of declining innovation productivity.
Yeah, that Eroom's law effect.
Right. And now exploring how AI seems poised to potentially double the pace of R&D, unlocking hundreds of billions in value. It really feels like a profound shift in how we discover and create.
It really does. And maybe just a final provocative thought to leave you with.
Okay.
We talked about AI demonstrating this capacity for, let's call it creativity, that goes beyond human bias, like AlphaGo's Move 37.
The move no human would make.
Exactly. And its ability to design entirely new things, like David Baker's proteins that don't exist in nature. So the question is, what previously unimaginable breakthroughs, things we thought were impossible for human minds alone, might now actually be within reach? What happens when humans and AI truly collaborate to accelerate the very process of discovery itself? It's not just about doing more faster. It might be about exploring completely new kinds of ideas, ideas that were literally unthinkable before.